Discover the incredible moment. A tiny kitten changed a cop's life forever. You won't believe how. Jake Miller sat in his patrol car, the sun dipping low in the sky, casting long shadows across the quiet streets of his town. Today felt like another monotonous day, a patchwork of dull routine, punctuated only by the occasional call about a barking dog or a speeding car. The weight of grief sat heavy on his shoulders. The recent loss of his mother loomed in the corners of his consciousness, stirring memories he couldn't repress. She'd always told him, "You show kindness even when the world doesn't deserve it." But lately, Jake found himself lost, caught between the rigid demands of his job and the vulnerability that plagued him since her passing. Suddenly, a flicker of movement captured his attention. There, huddled against the curb, was a tiny abandoned kitten, her wide, pleading eyes gazing up at him. Ignoring her would be easier, just another stray to brush off. Yet something inside him stirred, a deep-rooted protective instinct awakened by the little creature's gaze. As he knelt and extended a hand, a gesture so out of character, she nestled against him, a warmth spreading through his chest that felt foreign and uncomfortable. He named her Whiskers, but it was he who was caught in the soft curl of her tiny paw. At home, caring for Whiskers unveiled cracks in his tough exterior. A flood of memories swelled, his mother's laughter, her gentle nudges to treat others with compassion. Each purr from the kitten echoed with an unsettling reminder of all he had lost. In the confines of his home, he grappled with his feelings. Was he allowed to soften? With each bite of kibble offered, the walls he built around his heart chipped away, revealing layers that ached with isolation and fear. Jake's profession, always calling for stoicism, felt stifling in light of this newfound tenderness. But the shelter of these feelings cracked when a scandal erupted within his department. Officers he once called friends were implicated in a web of corruption. The choice now lay before him, stark and unyielding, to remain silent for loyalty's sake, or to speak up, risking ostracism and his job. The thought simmered in him, igniting a clash of loyalty and integrity that churned his stomach. Could he betray his brothers in blue, those he'd shared years of camaraderie with? Yet, could he truly stand by, knowing their silence would uphold a toxic culture? As tensions brewed both at work and within his heart, Jake's breathing quickened. The shadow of Whiskers passed by his feet, a symbol of all he yearned to protect. What would her presence mean if he turned a blind eye to wrongdoing? The fragile peace he found in this connection shattered under the weight of his conscience. Just as he felt the pulse of a decision ready to break, a shrill ring from his phone sliced through the air, leaving his jaw clenched in dread. What now? Whatever it was felt threatening, a dark omen warning him that he might lose everything he had begun to build with Whiskers. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can, leave a like. It really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake's heart raced as his mind spiraled. What if the call was about the investigation? What if it exposed him as a whistleblower? Could he withstand the backlash while still protecting Whiskers, the gentle embodiment of everything his mother taught him? Torn between the harsh demands of his career and the tender bond forming with the kitten, he stood at a precipice, uncertain if he could leap into the unknown. The crackle of the phone echoed in his ears, a stark reminder that the time for decisions was at hand. And with every pulse of anxiety, he couldn't help but wonder, could he really protect what he had chosen to love? Jake's fingers trembled as he lifted the phone to his ear, the weight of anticipation pressing against his chest like a lead anchor. The familiar voice of his sergeant came through, laced with a tense urgency that set off alarms in Jake's mind. "Miller, we need you to come in. Now." The call felt like a countdown timer ticking away his attempts to maintain both integrity and loyalty. He could hear the rustling of paperwork, hushed voices secluded from the main hall, gossip carried on the winds of uncertainty. As Jake hung up, his heart sank. He glanced down at Whiskers, curled into a peaceful ball on the couch, innocent of the turmoil brewing around them. For a moment, that purity was enough to fortify his resolve. Driving through the familiar streets, Jake's thoughts clouded with doubt. How did one balance fear of reprisal with the imperative of doing what was right? The promise he'd made to himself, to always listen to his mother's words, felt as tenuous as a whisper in the wind. Each passing block felt like a plea from Whiskers, reminding him of the importance of kindness in a world that sometimes seemed devoid of it. When he arrived at the station, an air of tension enveloped the entrance. Officers with furrowed brows exchanged furtive glances, their camaraderie appearing to melt away under the weight of fear. Jake's footsteps echoed against the sterile walls, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling within him. He could feel the eyes of his colleagues on him, watchful and wary, each passing moment heightening the inherent conflict of his choice, to expose their misdeeds or to remain complicit and shield himself from the storm. As he entered the conference room, familiar faces filled the seats, their expressions ranging from anxiety to anger. The chief spoke bluntly about the investigation, the whispers of corruption echoing louder than ever. Jake swallowed hard as he realized the depths of their betrayal, his chest tightening. This was no longer just an inside job. It was a core rot, endangering the very essence of what he'd sworn to protect. Amidst the tension, whispers of his own doubts clawed at him. Would breaking the silence break him? Surely, his words could ignite more than just a scandal. They could rupture his friendships, pull the masks off the faces of those he once trusted. As the reality sank in, he considered Whiskers once more. Her unyielding loyalty had awakened something dormant in him, a resilience, a sense of responsibility to stand for what was morally right, not just what was easy. He sat up straighter, impatience fueling the fire in him. He wasn't just protecting Whiskers' newfound warmth. He would be protecting the force's integrity from degeneration. The thoughts transitioned into a resolve, building momentum like an approaching storm. The decision seemed clearer now. It was his obligation to unfurl the truth, not only for his conscience but for all of them. Just then, his phone vibrated, jolting him from his thoughts. The name flashed on the screen, one of the implicated officers. Glancing furtively around him, he quickly answered. The weight of fear mingled with adrenaline coursing through him. "Jake." The voice on the other end was cold and calculating. "Let's meet. We need to talk about the investigation." A chill raced down his spine. What did they want? The enormity of the moment weighed heavier than the desires to protect Whiskers, to protect himself. Choices were crystallizing before him, but what kind of confrontation awaited? The time had come to face the shadows of his deception, and as uncertainty loomed, so did the realization that he could no longer afford the luxury of silence. His grip on the phone tightened, uncertainty battling with determination, ready to plunge into a fray that could reshape his entire world. What would he find when he stepped into that meeting, and what would he lose in the process? Only one thing was certain. The moment of truth was drawing near. Jake's heart raced as he stepped out of his car, each footfall resonating with the gravity of the impending meeting. The muted sounds of the world around him faded, rendering the atmosphere thick with tension and foreboding. He was acutely aware of the cold sweat forming at the nape of his neck, and for a fleeting moment, wished to escape to the comforting warmth of his home and the gentle purr of Whiskers. As he walked through the parking lot, Jake mulled over the implications of the call. This was not just a casual conversation. It was a confrontation draped in threat and intricacies. The weight of responsibility pressed onto his shoulders, reminding him that each decision he made could alter not just his fate, but those of the people he cared about. Arriving at the predetermined location, an old diner tucked away at the end of a quiet street, Jake hesitated. The neon lights buzzed above him, casting a sickly glow on the cracked pavement. It exemplified the tarnished world he was now stepping into, a place where trust twisted into treachery, and every friendly face could hide ulterior motives. Inside, the diner was dim, with only a few patrons scattered at tables, their quiet conversations murky and indistinct. Jake spied the officer across the room, leaning back in a booth, a half-eaten burger abandoned before him. The man's expression exhibited confidence, an unsettling familiarity that made Jake's blood boil and bile rise in his throat. This officer had been a mentor, a figure who had shared wisdom and camaraderie, now potentially on the opposite side of Jake's crisis. As he slid into the opposing seat, he met the officer's eyes. "What do you want, Hunter?" Jake's voice wavered slightly, the tension palpable as the words slipped from his mouth. This meeting could unravel everything. Jake's role as a sieve or as a sentinel. Hunter's lips twisted into a sly smile and he leaned forward, a glimmer of malice flaring in his eyes. "You know why we're here, Jake. It's not what it looks like. Not really. You and I both know that keeping things discreet makes life easier. There's a solid network, and you're a part of it whether you like it or not." Jake clenched his jaw, each word resonating like a poisoned dagger. Hunter's insinuations struck at his core, challenging him to compromise his principles. "I want no part in this, Hunter. People's lives are at stake. You're manipulating measures for your gain, not for the safety of anyone else." Hunter chuckled, an unsettling sound that bounced off the walls of the diner. "And you think they'll listen to you? You're just a rookie playing hero. What happens when your whistleblowing finds you on the wrong side? All I'm asking is for you to choose wisely before you pull that trigger." A myriad of emotions crashed within Jake, a blend of anger, fear, and clarity, forming a storm inside his mind. Detaching himself from this confrontation would mean allowing corruption to flourish, but standing firm risked everything he had ever known, including his sense of self. "There's a line that can't be crossed. I refuse to be part of this decay," Jake affirmed, his voice steadier now, bolstered by the resolve that had ignited within him. The words felt liberating, but the repercussions loomed large. What would a refusal cost him? As he stood to leave, Hunter's tone grew dangerously low. "You're making a mistake, kid. They'll come for you. We're family here, and family doesn't forget." Jake felt the chill of impending danger as he walked out, the gravity of his newfound allegiance weighing heavily. He had declared war, and this was just the beginning. Turning the corner to his car, he realized he had to rally his thoughts, dig deep, and pull every reserve of courage he could muster. What lay ahead was uncertain, but he could no longer conceal his moral compass. He would need allies, tools of knowledge, and perhaps a strategy that embraced the darkness without losing himself in it. Time was rushing against him, and the allies he sought would be essential in the coming fight. As he started the engine and pulled away from the diner, a fervent question lingered in his mind. How far was he willing to go to expose the truth before it consumed him whole? Jake's hands clenched on the steering wheel, knuckles whitening as he navigated the dimly lit streets away from the diner. Each turn felt like a step deeper into an insidious maze, the walls closing in with every passing street lamp. He wrestled with the weight of Hunter's words, heavy with implications that stirred unease in his gut. He could no longer ambivalently straddle the line of right and wrong. The lingering question haunted him. What was the cost of integrity in a world steeped in deception? The adrenaline from his confrontation with Hunter coursed through his veins, propelling him forward into the night. But a creeping doubt whispering its poison began to unravel his resolve. His mind raced with countless scenarios. Each prospect weighed heavily, distributing shards of fear and determination seamlessly. What if he lost everything? His job, his friends, and perhaps more critically his sense of self. Pushing those thoughts aside, he focused instead on choices, drawing upon the foundation built during his training. Jake reminded himself of the reasons he initially chose this path: a desire to protect and serve, to hunt down the truth at all costs. Arriving home, the warmth lacked its usual comfort. Whiskers perched on the windowsill, tail flicking back and forth in recognition. Jake felt the cat's gaze pierce through the chaos swirling within him, and as he slumped onto the couch, a mixture of exhaustion and determination enveloped him. He needed help, but allies were not easily found in a world where threats lurked behind familiar faces. Yet, he realized, he was still unearthing facets about himself that he had yet to fully embrace. His instincts sharpened and his intellect trained, he was no longer the naive rookie Hunter had dismissed. The ceiling fan spun lazily above him, a mechanical reminder to confront the immediate task of finding allies. He needed individuals who shared his values and recognized the growing shadows within the precinct. In his mind, A list began to form. Former colleagues, friends who still believed in the ideal of justice, even those disgruntled officers who had silently voiced their discontent with the department's ethics. The tough decision lay ahead. Who could he trust? Trust defined a frail bridge, precariously attached to the reality that each person Jake reached out to might also be ensnared in Hunter's web. The invisible lines of loyalty and betrayal twisted around him, but if he were to breach the fortress of corruption, he had to be bold. As the hours slipped by, Jake made a plan. He would start by reaching out to Anna, an analytical officer known for her unwavering dedication to justice. Her reputation for investigating departmental misconduct was well-deserved. She had faced pushback but never wavered. If anyone could be trusted, it would be her. But would she still believe in the cause? Would she turn away at the risk of becoming a target too? Jake recognized that the fear of exposure was paralyzing, not just for him, but for anyone he might involve. Yet he was learning that it was precisely in these moments of uncertainty that true courage emerged. Facing the possibility of losing everything could forge an unbreakable alliance in pursuit of justice. With his phone in hand, he dialed Anna's number, his heart pounding as it rang. Each tone felt as though it echoed across the chasm of potential devastation. He finally exhaled, shaking off the trepidation that threatened to silence him. As her voice came through the line, fresh worries mingled with hope, two emotions concurrently fueling his fire. "Jake, what's going on?" she asked, cautious yet open. The warmth of familiarity sparkled in her words, urging him to grasp this moment as an opportunity. "Anna, I need to talk to you. It's urgent," he replied, the words tumbling out with an urgency he hoped would convey the gravity of his looming challenge. But he wasn't prepared for the question that would inevitably follow. "About what?" The silence on the line hung thick with unspoken implications, and as Jake contemplated revealing his mission to confront the dark underbelly of the department, he felt the tension radiate. Would he risk his alliance with Anna on the fragile threads of impending danger? Steeling himself, he realized as the stakes rose, so did his potential for growth, not just as a police officer, but as an individual determined to carve out a path guided by integrity against the tide of corruption. As he heard her respond cautiously, acknowledging the urgency in his tone, Jake understood the path had shifted dramatically, and the war was beginning to evolve. Darkness beckoned, yet within that darkness lay the potential for profound change. What awaited them behind the closed doors of the precinct? Only time would disclose the depth of their commitment to the truth, as Jake prepared to navigate the complex battle ahead. As Anna's voice pierced through his uncertainty, Jake felt a spark of determination ignite within him. "I can't discuss this over the phone," he insisted, feeling the weight of every word. "Can we meet? Somewhere discreet?" "Sure. How about the old coffee shop on Fifth Avenue?" she suggested, her tone shifting from concern to compliance. Knowing the place offered a sense of privacy, Jake nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "Okay, I'll be there in 30 minutes, he said, hanging up before any more questions or doubts could surface. He needed clarity, and this meeting would provide just that, though it was laced with trepidation. He took a moment to gather himself, pacing the space of his apartment like a caged animal. His instincts kicked in, churning with the urgency of the mission ahead. The dim lighting hung heavily, reflecting the tumult within him. Jake recognized that he was standing on the threshold of a crucial juncture, a moment that could redefine his career and personal ethics. He grabbed his coat and wallet, leaving his phone behind, aware that every distraction needed to be discarded for this meeting. Stepping outside, the cool breeze nudged him awake, the city pulsing around him, oblivious to the inner turmoil he carried. The streets hummed with life, a stark contrast to the solitude that engulfed him just moments before. Navigating through the vibrant crowd, he felt a disparity between the normalcy around him and the chaos brewing in his own mind. As he entered the coffee shop, Jake's senses heightened. The familiar aroma of brewing coffee enveloped him, but the warmth felt distant. His eyes quickly scanned the room, searching for Anna amidst the clinking of cups and low conversations. There she sat, her brow furrowed with concentration over her steaming mug. "Jake," she greeted, her eyes searching his for answers. "What's happened?" He took a deep breath, finding the strength to break through the hesitation that had coiled tightly around him. "I think there's a serious problem in the precinct, corruption that runs deeper than we imagine, and it involves Hunter." Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly composed herself. "Are you sure about this?" Jake nodded, recounting the telltale signs and his confrontation with Hunter. He shared strategically, laying out each detail but stopping short of overwhelming her. Instead, he invited her onto the same path of discovery, highlighting the inconsistencies he had observed. He watched her face shift, processing the weight of his words. Finding the right phrasing became pivotal. "I need your help, Anna. If we're going to reveal the truth and take down those responsible, we need to work together." Silence enveloped them as she grasped the seriousness of the situation. Jake could feel her weighing the risks, the possible threats creeping closer just beyond their immediate surroundings. "What if we're caught? You know what Hunter's capable of," she said finally, voice low but steady. "Then we prepare. We plan strategically," he urged, driven by their common commitment to justice. "But doing nothing, letting it fester, isn't an option. We have to take a stand." Jake realized that he wasn't just making a plea for assistance. He was also confronting his own fears, inviting Anna to embrace a personal evolution alongside his own. Clarity surged within him, pushing aside the shadows that danced at the edges of his resolve. This was about more than just the precinct. It was about a deep commitment to the ideals they both cherished. As they discussed potential strategies, Jake unearthed a hidden tenacity in Anna, the resolve etched in her expression confirming the depth of their shared conviction. They became aligned in purpose, recognizing that the unearthly weight of injustice could be lifted, but only if they were brave enough to bear the burden together. With their meeting winding down, an unsettling thought crept into Jake's mind. What if Hunter is already onto us? The question hung ominously, like a storm cloud threatening rain. "Then we make our first move now," Anna replied, her gaze fierce with determination. "Let's find out who's with us, find the others who, like us, will fight back." Jake felt both an exhilarating thrill and a creeping apprehension wash over him. His sense of autonomy swelled. He was no longer operating in the shadows, but stride for stride alongside someone who shared his ideals. They were stepping into a battle laced with peril. As they exited the coffee shop, his heart raced with an ambition that had been dormant for too long. But just as the possibilities began to crystallize, a dark, looming uncertainty snaked through him. Was he truly prepared for the war that was about to unfold? The time had come for him to face the reality that risking everything could lead to a path far beyond what he initially envisioned. As they moved forward, Jake realized they were not just embarking on a mission. They were igniting a firestorm of change, and every ember held the promise of transforming their lives forever. What consequences would this firestorm unleash? What sacrifices would they inevitably have to face in their pursuit of truth? Jake stepped out into the bustling streets, Anna's words echoing in his mind. Each step felt heavier, yet his resolve began to crystallize. They were embarking on a perilous yet vital crusade, and the stakes had never been higher. The cacophony of the city faded into a dull hum as the reality of their undertaking settled around him. They would either expose the truth or remain victims of a corrupt system. In their brief meeting, he had felt a flicker of hope. Anna's presence infused him with a determination he hadn't realized he needed. Now, as he walked beside her, anticipation surged through him. Collaborative effort propelled confidence, squeezing out elements of doubt he had allowed to fester for too long. He was no longer merely an isolated individual hidden behind a badge. He was a partner in a shared mission. But with that partnership came the burden of responsibility. "Where do we start?" he asked, pulling himself from the mental maze that had ensnared him in recent weeks. Anna, her brow slightly knitted in concentration, led the way down a side street filled with independent shops and eateries. "We need to gauge the sentiment within the precinct. There might be officers who felt uncomfortable with Hunter. If we can find them, we can begin to create a network." Jake contemplated the idea, balancing it against potential risks. "But how do we know who to trust? Hunter has his fingers everywhere." "Then let's strategize carefully," Anna countered, her voice steady. "We take our time. No unnecessary haste. Discretion is key. As they passed a small park, Jake observed remnants of spring clinging to life. Buds blossomed on trees, and children laughed in distant echoes. These trivialities seemed foreign against the severe backdrop of their mission. This wasn't just about challenging a corrupt officer. It was about restoring belief in what was right. A battle he had long relegated to his subconscious. Incredibly, with each step, he began to explore his own capabilities. Jake realized how often he had accepted the status quo, wondering if this newfound pursuit was awakening a latent spark within him, a conflict he felt he could finally embrace. Perhaps he was more than just a cop who took orders. Perhaps he had the potential to be a crusader, grounded in principle, rather than conformity. Tonight, Jake said resolutely, let's arrange a meeting with whoever we can find that feels like they're being silenced. We can reach out discreetly. Text, no calls. His voice took on an edge, brimming with conviction. We're not just getting ahead of Hunter, we're building a coalition. Anna smiled, appreciation in her eyes. I knew you'd find your footing. This is different. We're not just looking for the truth, we're building a team willing to stand up for it. As they discussed a plan for their first discreet outreach, Jake felt an urgency that underscored their need for action. With every detail they mapped out, he sensed the power of strategy fueling their resolve. This was not merely about dismantling the corruption that festered within the precinct. It was about empowering themselves and others who had remained silent, or too afraid to speak up. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting an orange glow across the street. A signal, perhaps, that their time for swift action was upon them. With the day's light waning, the shadows that had pursued him now felt like allies, an abstract manifestation of the realities they would confront. Yet, the looming fear of being caught still gnawed at the edges of his newfound optimism. What if we lose everything? He asked, the question nudging dangerously close to the surface. Anna didn't flinch. Then we lose everything fighting for something worthwhile. What's the alternative? To stay complacent while Hunter undermines everything we believe in? Her firm stance quelled his doubts momentarily. Yet, in the back of his mind, a troubling whisper persisted. Was he truly ready to step fully into this new role? And if he plunged into the depths of this fight, how would it change him? As they parted ways for the evening, a shiver traveled down his spine, not from the cool air that pressed against him, but from the impending challenge awaiting him. Gratitude stirred within him for Anna's unwavering support, but alongside it loomed a weight of uncertainty. Jake now stood on the brink of something transformative. He was ready to confront the truth but teetered on the edge of self-discovery. What would he sacrifice in the pursuit of justice? As every ember of doubt flickered in the flame of his ambition, the night unfolded silently, holding its secrets close. Tomorrow would bring the crucial meeting, an encounter that could shift the tide in ways he might not anticipate. But one rivalry promised danger. Jake could only hope to embrace the type of courage that would relentlessly forge him into the man he needed to be. What would he find when he dared to face the darkest corners of his own life? Would he emerge ready to confront Hunter, or would he lose himself trying to navigate such tumultuous waters? The morning sun broke through the curtain of clouds, painting the city in a warm, golden hue that promised a fresh start. Jake's heart raced as he prepared for the meeting that would, he hoped, reshape his role within the precinct. The taste of uncertainty lingered on his tongue, like biting into a fruit that was not fully ripe. There was potential sweetness, but he couldn't quite predict the flavor. His mind was a whirlwind of strategies, risks, and worst-case scenarios. Each one played like a scene from an intense thriller. He imagined rogue officers caught in a web of loyalty and fear, desperate for a way out. The gravity of this mission weighed on him like a thick fog. It was daunting, the thought of stepping into this unknown, and yet, he felt an indescribable pull toward the truth they sought. Could he genuinely be the catalyst for change among officers frozen in complicity? He arrived at the designated coffee shop, its interior dim yet inviting, as if it were shielding them from the chaos just outside. Taking a seat in a corner booth, he took stock of the eclectic crowd around him, each face a potential ally or adversary. Anxiety tinged his excitement. Who would walk through that door as the first soldier in their battleground against corruption? Anna joined him shortly, her presence a solid anchor amid the uncertainty. She scanned the room, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Any signs yet?" she asked, leaning in slightly, her voice low to avoid drawing attention. "Not yet," Jake replied, fidgeting with his coffee cup. The caffeine buzz did little to quell the nervous energy coursing through him. "I just keep thinking about how we can affirm these officers can trust us." As they continued talking, a sense of shared purpose infused the air, gradually brightening the atmosphere. He realized that beneath the layers of dread lay an excitement he couldn't ignore. The challenge ahead promised not just to reveal the truth about Hunter's rot within the precinct, but to reveal hidden aspects of himself, potential he had never dared to explore until now. Each discussion brought clarity to his vision. They needed to cultivate an environment of trust. Operation Whisper, what they called their initiative, was about more than voicing grievances. It was about a collective awakening. As he spoke, Jake felt embers of leadership igniting within him, emotionally charged and wholly connected to a mission larger than himself. Their meeting commenced as a couple of officers entered, their body language unreadable but cautious. Jake's heart quickened. He was reconciled to the risks, yet every instinct urged him to navigate this carefully. He gestured for them to sit, extending empathy in their shared vulnerability. "We're here because we know something is wrong," he said, voice resolute but inviting. "You're not alone." The atmosphere shifted as they exchanged glances, tentative yet affirming. Stories began to unfold, weaving a narrative of discontent, disillusionment, and fear of retribution. Each word layered upon the next, building a tapestry of fractured trust and brave ideals. In that moment, Jake understood the potency of camaraderie. Each officer's voice became a thread among the fibers of their emerging coalition, shaping something tangible yet fragile. But lurking beneath the layers of connection lay a void of doubt. What if this alliance crumbled under the scrutiny of Hunter? The tension was real, escalating along with their discussions. Jake steeled himself. Could he protect this unity? As the meeting concluded, and they brokered plans for deeper connections, a sudden realization struck him. He was not merely advocating for the safety of others. In this fight, he was carving out a piece of his own identity. An unexpected strength emanated from the very act of seeking justice, illuminating a part of him that had remained dormant for too long. With Anna by his side, they stepped back into the world outside. The sun warmed their skin, yet a chill raced through him as he perceived Hunter lurking just on the periphery of their mission. "Are we ready for what comes next?" he whispered to Anna, uncertainty threading its way through his bravado. Her gaze held steady, a beacon of unwavering resolve. "It's time to bring the fight to him." Jake's pulse quickened. The confrontation was drawing near, and with it came clarity. The shadows of fear were increasingly overshadowed by a dawning sense of purpose, but he couldn't shake the weight of what he might lose in the quest for truth. As they stepped into the fray, dread morphed into determination, igniting his ambition. A challenge awaited that would test the core of his value system. He could feel it deep within. Every step taken was bringing him closer to uncharted territories, where moral boundaries would be tested. And yet, a darker question loomed ahead. Would he be ready to face Hunter when the moment arrived? Would he have the strength to confront the implications of becoming fully realized in his truth? The streets hummed with activity, but for Jake, every sound echoed with a sense of impending confrontation. Purpose infused his stride. He and Anna waited by Jake's car, the weight of shared anticipation hanging thick in the air. A decision loomed ahead, one that would test not just their mission but the very essence of who he was becoming. "Have you thought about what we'd say if Hunter confronts us?" Anna asked, crossing her arms as she thermally braced against the cool wind. "I can't let him intimidate us. We know what we're doing." Jake's voice faltered slightly, a flicker of doubt trailing behind his bold words. His confidence, once unshakable, now felt like a wax figure melting under scrutiny. "Right. But the stakes are higher than they've ever been. We need a plan, Jake. We can't just go in blind." Her tone held a blend of encouragement and caution, a reminder of the gravity resting on their shoulders. Jake exhaled, wrestling with the swelling tempest inside him. I know. But what if he's 10 steps ahead of us? We need to be strategic, or we'll lose everything. The very idea of losing their growing coalition filled him with dread, clashing against the hope he felt moments ago. Flashes of their early discussions echoed in his mind, whispers of courage, promises of change, the undeniable urgency for justice. But what about his own resolve? What did integrity cost in a world ruled by corruption? Determination surged through him, a flickering flame. They needed to act, not just for themselves, but for the officers who had aligned with them. They had risked everything to join the fight, and now, Hunter's presence loomed ominously like a thundercloud, threatening to extinguish that spark. "Let's gather everyone tonight at the old station. We can strategize and stand firm," Jake proposed, a newfound fervor coursing through him. The vision of unity reshaped his doubts, turning them into actionable paths. Anna nodded, a spark of confidence igniting in her eyes. "That's a good idea. We'll solidify our plans and maybe it'll help with—" With a sudden shift, Jake felt an unexpected wave of vulnerability wash over him. "What if we fail, Anna? What if our efforts only bring more harm?" He struggled against the possibility of letting everyone down, his voice faltering. "Failure is a teacher, Jake," she replied gently. "We can't control the outcome, but we can control how we approach this. If we act from a place of integrity, then we've already succeeded." He pondered her words, finding solace in her belief. The way she framed it resonated, slowly washing away the residual doubt that clung to him. Perhaps he wasn't merely a pawn in a game dictated by corrupt forces. He could be the architect of his own narrative. The evening wrapped itself around them like a protective cloak. Amidst the gathering shadows, two silhouettes moved through the darkness of uncertainty toward a singular purpose. Fear still whispered, but now it transformed into something else, something he could lean on. As the officers gathered at the old station, Jake's heart raced. Anticipation thrummed in the space, reverberating between him and Anna. There was power in these numbers, energy that felt electric. Tonight, they would forge connections, dismantle fears, and confront Hunter. Jake could almost taste the battle ahead. This was no longer just about saving others. It was a quest to reclaim his own narrative. The thought spurred his resolve, and he prepared to step onto the battlefield of truths. Then the door creaked, and a figure emerged at the back of the room. It was Sergeant Renshaw, a hook in the gut, making him freeze where he stood. Renshaw's reputation preceded him, a looming presence laden with allegiance to Hunter. The tension coiled tight. Was he here to deliver a warning, or be the final threat against this fragile coalition? Jake's breath caught. The moment of truth had arrived, and with it a desperate question nagged at him. Could he turn this unexpected confrontation into a pivot for the unity he craved? Or would it sink their ship before it even had a chance to sail? Jake's mind raced as he faced Sergeant Renshaw. The man's reputation was a blade, sharp and unyielding, dividing loyalty from treachery. Renshaw stepped forward, his presence commanding, wearing a hardened expression that seemed to reflect the darkness of 1,000 choices made under pressure. "Jake," Renshaw began, his voice low and resonant, a mix of curiosity and disdain. "What do you think you're doing here?" The question pierced Jake like a dart, challenging the very essence of his motives. He fought against the instinct to retreat, to shrink back into the shadows of doubt. Instead, he stood taller. "We're standing for what's right," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "That matters more than your old loyalties." Renshaw's eyes narrowed, sizing Jake up. "And what do you think that means? You think changing the game is easy? You think people will just follow you because you're playing the hero?" Jake swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Renshaw's scrutiny. The confidence he had fought so hard to gather began to unravel. Each word felt like a ticket to doubt, but Anna's earlier encouragement flickered in the back of his mind. This was a moment he couldn't afford to squander. "Change isn't easy," Jake asserted, forcing clarity into his conviction. "But it starts with recognizing the problem, with taking a stand, no matter the odds." He noticed Anna shift beside him, her eyes locked on Renshaw. There was urgency there, a silent plea for support. Renshaw continued to scrutinize, and Jake felt the gathered officers shift restlessly, their energy fluctuating between tension and anticipation. "Is that what this is? A revival?" Renshaw asked, an incredulous scoff escaping his lips. "A band of misfits thinking they can topple a system they barely understand?" The sting of those words lingered, an uneasy truth threading itself through Jake's resolve. The coalition, however well-intentioned, felt fragile under Renshaw's relentless probing. What if they were just a collection of frightened officers grasping for something they barely knew how to achieve? Thinking quickly, Jake answered, "Maybe we're not perfect, but we're willing to learn. We're here to confront the reality you and Hunter hide behind. We're choosing to fight rather than fold." Renshaw's expression shifted slightly, intrigued, yet still skeptical. He stepped forward, towering over Jake. "And what if I report you all? What if I tell Hunter everything?" In that moment, Jake realized the power of vulnerability and leadership. He had never anticipated this direct confrontation with someone who embodied every fear he had harbored. Instead of crumbling, he decided to harness that fear into something galvanizing. "Then you'd be choosing to perpetuate the very issue we're trying to eliminate," Jake responded, heart racing but resolve strengthening. "But I see a choice before us, a possibility for something greater. This isn't just about us, it's about the future. What sort of legacy do you want to leave, Renshaw?" The silence that ensued felt electric. Renshaw's facade cracked, exposing something beneath. The flicker of contemplation, perhaps even doubt. Jake seized the moment, pitching his voice louder, inviting. "If you stand with us, we can do more than just fight. We can reshape this role, this department. We can bring back the honor that was once here. But only if you believe in the cause, only if you refuse to bow to the likes of Hunter." Renshaw hesitated, the tension of the room thick. Jake's heart hammered in his chest, half hopeful, half braced for the worst. "What will it be?" Jake pressed. The atmosphere pulsed as the officers leaned in, breath caught, waiting to see if their fears would be validated, or if a new beginning was about to unfold. But before Renshaw could respond, the door swung open, and an unexpected third party entered. A figure cloaked in shadows, their identity obscured. A chill rushed through the room. Jake felt the ground shift beneath him. The confrontation he had hoped would rally them could spiral into something much darker. The stakes weren't just professional, they were personal, spiraling into a labyrinth of outcomes he could scarcely anticipate. Could this figure unveil secrets that threatened to unravel everything they had worked for, or would it be the catalyst for necessary change? The moment hung in balance, and Jake steadied himself for whatever revelation lay ahead. The figure stepped into the light, revealing itself as a familiar face. Officer Bailey, an outspoken member of the precinct known for her integrity and fierce dedication to the badge. Relief washed over Jake, but that was short-lived. She rushed toward them, eyes darting between Jake, Anna, and Renshaw. "Jake, Anna, we need to talk, now!" An electric tension filled the air, and Jake could sense the urgency in Bailey's tone. Everything they had fought for felt fragile, poised on the edge of a precipice. "What's going on?" Jake asked, his voice steadier than he felt. Bailey glanced around, her voice dropping almost to a whisper. "Hunter knows you're gathering support. He's been monitoring the precinct's movements, and word is spreading that you're planning to expose him." The anxiety returned full force, constricting Jake's throat. "What do you mean?" His heart thrummed in anticipation. Exposure could mean the end of everything they had worked for. His job, their mission, their lives. "I overheard him talking to some of the guys in the locker room. He's tightening his grip. If we don't act decisively, he'll bury any dissent before it ever has a chance to rise." Bailey's voice was firm, but Jake could hear the tremor beneath. The reality of their situation was harsh, a monster lurking in the darkness, and it was his job to spotlight it. Renshaw's posture shifted, an unexpected ally for a moment as he crossed his arms in contemplation. "It seems like the odds are stacked against us," he said, looking at Bailey and then at Jake. "But you kids seem determined. How do you plan to combat Hunter?" The camaraderie that infused the room was fragile, but the recognition of purpose empowered Jake. Facing the gravity of their situation solidified his resolve. "We need to confront Hunter. We can't let fear dictate our actions. If he knows we're gathering a coalition, we can't delay or be silent. Anna chimed in, her voice resolute. We need documented evidence. If we can collect proof and share it with internal affairs, it might buy us time and credibility. We need to gather what we know, compile it, and present it in a way that's indisputable. Jake felt the support of his colleagues bolster his growing confidence. In this moment, he was not just another cop caught off guard. He was becoming part of a team ready to confront a system rife with corruption. Then let's gather everything we can tonight, Jake said, excitement flaring within him. Time is of the essence. We can meet back here later and lay out our plan. We have to be strategic and discreet. Bailey nodded, her determination reflected in her gaze. There are officers who have voiced dissent. They're hesitant but still want change. It's time we draw them in. With that, everyone set about their tasks, urgency transforming a previous uncertainty into a dynamic coalition. They exchanged numbers, each officer spreading word to rally others discreetly. As the group dispersed into the night, Jake felt the invigorating pulse of teamwork coursing through him. He had gone from standing alone to gathering courageous spirits who believed in something greater than themselves. Hours later, in a newly secured, dimly lit area of the precinct, officers filed in. Each face carried a mixture of determination and trepidation, and Jake stood at the forefront, more confident than ever. As they gathered around a table strewn with files, the air buzzed with potential. This was not just about truth, but the reaffirmation of integrity, a collective fight against suppression. Jake began outlining what they found while reassuring them. Together, we'll expose the truth. We're not just cops. We're guardians of the law, and it's time we reclaimed our duties. We owe it to the badge, and we owe it to one another. The finality of those words ignited something within the room. Each officer nodded, a shared conviction coursing like electricity among them. They exchanged information, drawing lines between instances of corruption, greed, and misconduct among Hunter's network. As he witnessed the momentum building, Jake realized the vastness of their potential. Each piece of evidence gathered not only served as leverage against Hunter, but also strengthened Jake's perception of himself. No longer merely a reluctant participant, but an active leader in this mission for change. The meeting wound down, but excitement thrummed in the air as Jake prepared to conclude. He scanned every face before him, now united, and said firmly, "Whatever happens next, remember, we are in this together. We will face what comes next side by side. No one fights alone." Applause reverberated around the room, and as he looked into the eyes of his colleagues, he recognized that this was his moment of transformation. Years of doubt fell away. As they moved forward, the echo of his mother's unwavering encouragement surged through him. This was what she had hoped for, the kindness and courage to confront injustice. With a solid confidence now surging through him, bolstered by the support of this new family forged in battle, Jake felt like he truly belonged. Together, they would challenge the status quo and unmask the darkness that had haunted their precinct for far too long. That night, a coalition was born, and with it, their mission became clear. They would stand up against the very corruption that threatened their purpose, but also their lives. Their fight was just beginning, yet Jake felt a deep, undeniable satisfaction. He was no longer battling demons alone. He was stepping into the light of ignited purpose. And for the first time, it felt like victory was not just a possibility. It was an urgency. Now, as the dawn of change approached, Jake understood deeply. Personal fulfillment and unwavering truth were the legacies they would leave behind, not only for themselves but for every officer who sought to reclaim their mission of justice. The time had come, and together, they would conquer the shadows. You need to subscribe now to not miss another emotional story like this one. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread the word about this inspiring journey. Comment below your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this remarkable transformation. Don't wait even one more second to support stories of overcoming injustice.